The Patterson family boardroom always felt cold, even in the heat of summer. Maybe it was the steely walls or the towering windows framing Manhattan's skyline like a fortress. But today, the chill ran deeper. I sat at the long oak table, hands folded neatly, watching my father pace like a lion too long caged. Marcus Patterson didn't do waiting. For 3 decades, as CEO of Patterson Industries, people waited for him, but not today. Today, he was waiting for the family's trust lawyer, for what he believed would be a routine execution, disinheriting his only daughter. Across from me, James and Andrew wore matching smug expressions, Dad's chosen heirs. They'd followed the family script to the letter: business school, company internships, obedient climbs up the corporate ladder. I'd taken a different route: investment banking, private equity, building something of my own. Dad had called it a mistake. Real power, he'd said, comes from running an empire, not counting someone else's money. If only he knew. Where the hell is Harrison? He barked, checking his watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. He's never late. Traffic, I said quietly, knowing exactly why Harrison wasn't rushing. James scoffed. Maybe he's stalling, trying to talk you out of this. He tugged at his silk tie, lounging back like a man who believed the world still belonged to him. Won't change anything. I said nothing, not yet. I thought about the conversation I'd had with Harrison 3 months ago, just after I'd uncovered what my brothers had done with the company pension fund, the offshore transfers, the doctored ledgers, the giant loan they'd taken out to keep the house of cards from collapsing. A loan that now belonged to me. The boardroom door creaked open. Harrison stepped in, his usual poise dampened by unease. Behind him came another man, tall, sharply dressed, carrying a briefcase I recognized. "Mr. Patterson," Harrison said, voice even but cautious. "Apologies for the delay. This is Mr. Banks of Everett Capital. He requested to be present." Dad frowned. "This is a family issue. Why bring in a stranger?" Before Harrison could speak, I stood, because I asked him to. The room went still. Dad's eyes narrowed, his disappointment arriving right on cue. "Olivia, what the hell are you doing?" Mr. Banks set his briefcase on the table and opened it with a quiet click. "Perhaps we should start with the reason for today's meeting. You're seeking to amend the family trust." Dad straightened. "Correct. It's straightforward. My sons will divide the trust and the company. Olivia will be removed." "And the basis for her removal?" Banks asked. "She's not qualified," James interjected. "She ditched the family business to go play banker." I almost laughed. "Then," Banks said, calmly spreading out several documents, "we should take a closer look at qualifications, especially in light of Patterson Industries' current financial liabilities." Andrew leaned forward, suddenly alert. "What liabilities?" "All of them," I answered softly. "Go ahead, Mr. Banks, tell them who owns their debt." My father stiffened, his hand suspended above his water glass. Banks cleared his throat. "Roughly 3 months ago, Patterson Industries took a $40 million loan, secured against the company and trust assets. As of last week, that debt was purchased, entirely, by a private investment entity." James waved a dismissive hand. "So what? That doesn't mean anything." I opened my folder, revealing the paperwork. "The entity is mine. I bought your debt, every last dollar of it." Dad paled. "That's not possible," he muttered. "You wouldn't, couldn't." "Couldn't what, Dad?" I cut in. "Understand how your golden boys were bleeding the company? Couldn't track the shell companies, or raise the capital to take control of their loan?" I pushed the evidence forward. "You told me finance was a waste of time. Turns out, it was exactly the education I needed." James stood abruptly. "She's bluffing." "She's not," Banks said. "Her firm holds controlling interest in your outstanding debt, and in light of discrepancies in the pension fund records, she has legal grounds to demand immediate repayment, or take action to protect the assets." The room descended into chaos. James shouted about betrayal. Andrew slumped in his chair, white as paper. But my father, he just stared at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in decades. "Why?" he whispered. "Why do this to your own family?" I picked up my phone, pressed play. The video showed James and Andrew in the vault at night, removing files, swapping records. "Because someone had to," I said. "Someone had to protect the employees whose futures they gambled away, the people you were supposed to lead." I paused the video. "I tried to warn you, remember last year? You said I was just bitter." Harrison cleared his throat. "Given the circumstances, perhaps we should hold off on any changes to the trust." "No," I said firmly, We're not stalling. We're not giving them time to cover more tracks. We're doing this now. I turned to Mr. Banks. Show them the terms. He retrieved a thick packet from his briefcase, pages dense with legal language. Ms. Patterson is prepared to restructure the loan, preserve operations, and restore the pension fund on one condition. My father's voice was barely a whisper. What condition? I met his eyes. I take full control of the company, of the trust, everything. James and Andrew resign effective immediately, and you step down as CEO. You can't do this, James growled. We're family. Family, I repeated, laughing without warmth. Family doesn't rob its own employees. Family doesn't launder money through shell accounts. And family sure as hell doesn't disown their daughter without expecting fallout. I stood, gathering my things. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow, I said, pausing at the door. After that, I call the loan, and this empire, it collapses. I turned back once more, locking eyes with the man who taught me to be ruthless by excluding me. Oh, and Dad? I smiled, all edge. Turns out I can read a financial statement after all. Then I walked out, leaving behind their shock, their lawyer, and their fading grip on power. The next morning broke crisp and cold, the kind of October morning that made Manhattan feel carved from crystal. I sat alone in my corner office at Blackwood Investment Partners, 40 stories up, watching the city reflect the rising sun. The antique clock on the wall, an old relic from my former office at Patterson Industries, ticked toward 9 a.m. 2 minutes left. I didn't pace, didn't fidget. I'd already played my hand. Now I waited to see if they'd fold or fight. Sophia buzzed through on the intercom. Miss Patterson, your father is here. He's alone. Interesting. Send him in. The door opened. Marcus Patterson stepped inside. He looked smaller today, older. The crisp lines of his bespoke suit couldn't hide the wear in his frame. The commanding presence that once filled boardrooms like thunder had faded into something quieter, uncertain. Olivia. He stopped short of my desk, as if unsure he was allowed closer. I didn't offer a seat. Instead, I studied him in silence, the man who'd dismissed me, belittled me, never once considered me his equal. He placed a thick envelope on the desk. The papers are signed, full transfer. You control the company, the trust, everything. James and Andrew resigned this morning. I picked up the envelope but didn't open it. Where are they? James is with his lawyer. Andrew, he exhaled. Andrew's at the airport, said he needed time to think. So, I said evenly, they're running, again. Dad winced. They're still your brothers. Are they? I rose and walked to the window. When's the last time they acted like it? When was the last time any of you treated me like family? He said nothing. We thought we were protecting you, he finally muttered. I turned, eyes sharp. By cutting me out? By ignoring financial fraud? By trying to erase me from my own legacy? He sat heavily in one of the leather chairs. I didn't know about the pension fund, about what they were doing. I should have seen it, I should have known. But you didn't want to, I said, just like you never wanted to see me. His eyes were red, his voice low. How long have you known? I returned to my desk and pulled out a well-worn file. I started noticing inconsistencies last year. The company's earnings reports didn't align with real market behavior. I dug deeper, traced the money, found the offshore transfers, the shell companies, the fake expense trails. I opened the file, spreading documents across the desk, bank statements, internal emails, false accounting entries. They started small, stealing from the pension fund to bankroll personal ventures. When those collapsed, they doubled down. By the time I uncovered it all, they'd siphoned nearly 30 million. He looked stunned. Why didn't you tell me? I did. My voice dropped, colder than marble. Last Thanksgiving, you told me I was just stirring up drama, that I should let them run the business and stay in my lane. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Regret, too. So I did, I said. I built Blackwood. I made the right allies, and when they panicked and took out that loan, I made my move. He looked up at me, smaller now than I had ever seen him. And now? I opened my laptop. Now I fix what they broke. The pension fund will be restored, the financials will be audited, the company will be rebuilt with real oversight and transparency. He nodded slowly. And James and Andrew? He asked. I've sent everything to the SEC, I said. They'll likely avoid prison if they cooperate, but they're done. No board seats, no buyouts, no second chances. He closed his eyes. And for the first time in my life, I think he finally understood who I was. And what about me? That depends, I said. Are you ready to really see me? Not the version you imagined, the truth. He stared at me, eyes narrowing, voice low. I see you now, God help me, I do. I slid a document across the desk. Then prove it. A consulting contract, 3 years, advisory only. You help me fix what's broken, clean up the name you helped tarnish, but I'm in charge now. His hands trembled as he picked it up. You're offering me a seat, after everything? Because you didn't steal, I said. You just refused to see, and because someone once told me that real power isn't just taking control, it's knowing when to show mercy. Who told you that? My mother, I said quietly. I watched him closely. The day before she died, she made me promise to protect the family legacy, not the company, not the money, the values, what we were supposed to stand for. For the first time in years, I saw tears well in his eyes. She always saw things clearer than I did. I nodded. She did. Silence settled between us, dense with regret and everything we never said. Finally, he reached for the pen beside the contract. If I sign this, how do I know you won't burn it all down anyway? You don't, I said. Same way I never knew if you'd protect me. Trust works both ways. He signed. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. You've become a woman your mother would be proud of. I know, I said softly. I just wish you had been too. After he left, I sat in silence, staring at the signature that changed everything. The company was mine now, the legacy, the power, everything they tried to take from me. But this wasn't the end. This was the start of the real fight. Because taking control is one thing. Keeping it is another. 6 months later, a storm of transformation had swept through Patterson Industries. Nothing remained untouched. I sat in what used to be my father's office, now mine, scanning quarterly reports that told the story in numbers. The pension fund was restored. Employees affected by the scandal had been compensated. Governance had been overhauled. Transparency initiatives were active. And the stock price, after the initial crash, was steadily climbing. Not everyone liked the new order. There was a knock. Miss Patterson, the board is ready, Sophia said, stepping in, and this just arrived. She handed me a slim folder. Inside, a letter from James's attorney, demanding a review of his resignation, crying coercion, and threatening litigation. Classic James, always trying to bluff his way back in. I smiled, tucked the folder under my arm, and headed to the boardroom. The tension hit as soon as I stepped in. Half the board, my father's old allies, the ones who turned a blind eye for years. The other half, my appointments, sharp, principled, relentless. Even the seating showed the divide. My father sat near the back, silent but alert. To his credit, he'd been unexpectedly helpful these past months, offering insight, smoothing old rivalries. Maybe he was trying to make amends, or maybe he just didn't want to be forgotten. Either way, I kept him close. Trust, but verify, hard-earned wisdom. Good morning, I said, taking the head seat. Let's begin. We worked through the updates, revenue stabilizing, compliance initiatives rolling out, employee morale on the rise. Then came the flashpoint. Now, regarding the international restructuring proposal. Miss Patterson, interrupted Harold Winston, one of the old guard, there's a matter the board needs to raise. I nodded. Go ahead. He cleared his throat, discomfort flickering in his expression. Some shareholders have expressed concern about the speed and scope of changes. They're uneasy. You mean James, I said, cutting cleanly. Let's not pretend this is anonymous feedback. I got his lawyer's letter this morning. The room shifted, eyes flickered, a quiet murmur passed along the table like a current. Winston shifted uncomfortably. James represents substantial family interests. James represents nothing, I said, voice cold. His shares are held in trust pending the SEC investigation. He has no authority here, no voice at this table. But the family legacy. I stood slowly, both palms pressing into the polished wood of the boardroom table. The family legacy was nearly destroyed by the very people you're defending. Or have you forgotten the gutted pensions, the falsified reports, the families who almost lost everything so you could look the other way? The silence was immediate and absolute. Even Winston averted his gaze. I opened my laptop and turned it toward the board. Since we're so concerned about family interests, let's revisit a few of your own. The screen displayed archived emails, dated, timestamped, showing that several board members, including Winston, had been warned for years about financial irregularities, warnings they chose to ignore. "I've shown more restraint than most would've," I said. "When I took over, I could have gone scorched earth. You'd all be under review, if not indictment, but I believed in second chances." I closed the laptop with quiet finality. "Don't make me regret that." The message landed. You could see it in their posture, the old guard folding back into their seats like paper men in a rainstorm. I sat. "Now, unless there are more sentimental objections, let's move on to international restructuring." The remainder of the meeting passed with surprising efficiency. When it ended, my father lingered. "That was deftly handled," he said. I glanced at him. "I watched you do it for years. Picked up a few things, good and bad." He absorbed that, the edge not lost on him. "James won't quit, you know that. He'll keep pushing, keep circling." "Let him." I gathered my notes. "He's used to the girl who stayed quiet. That version of me is gone." He gave a slow nod. "No, she isn't. She just evolved." At the door, he hesitated. "Your mother used to say you were stronger than all of us." I never really understood what she meant, until now. I said nothing. He left. That night, over dinner, I met with Harrison, our longtime family lawyer, and now one of the few people I actually trusted. "He filed the suit," Harrison said, sliding a folder across the table. "Allegations of coercion, emotional distress, undue influence, classic James, all noise, no teeth." I flipped through the pages, barely skimming. "Let him burn through his trust fund chasing ghosts. We documented every move. We've got the board minutes, the recordings, the legal counsel sign-offs. He's swinging at shadows." He's also been reaching out to former partners, whisper campaigns, trying to rally old allies. "I know." I sipped my wine, "which is why I've been meeting with them one by one. You'd be amazed how fast loyalty flips when you show people the receipts." Harrison gave a slow smile. "You've planned for every angle, haven't you?" I didn't have a choice. I looked out across the city skyline, lit up like a battlefield. They trained me for this. Every time they sidelined me, every time they underestimated me, every time they told me I wasn't ready. I turned back to him. I was listening, and planning. He studied me, and now? Now I make sure no one ever gets to erase me again. "The company?" he asked. "Moves forward, clean, strong, accountable, the kind of legacy my mother would have been proud of." "And your brothers?" "They made their beds," I said. "Now they get to lie in them, far away from this boardroom." Later that night, I stood in my office alone. On the desk sat an old photo, our family, together, back when appearances were everything and the cracks were still beneath the surface. I picked it up, studied it. Then I opened a drawer and placed it inside, gently, before closing it shut. That chapter was over. Tomorrow would bring new fights, the lawsuit, the competitors eager to pounce, the board members still testing the limits of my resolve. But I was ready. They tried to write me out of the story. Instead, I rewrote the ending. And this time, the pen was mine.